This panel, we did this 2 years ago, and a lot of people asked for it again. And that's because the nature of franchising, again, it's all about people. As a franchisor and franchisees, there's a relationship. It's an interesting relationship. It's, I think, completely unique. It's not like having a manager or an employee. I know some franchisees, in my opinion, erroneously use the term franchise partner. I never use that term because they're not your partners, and if you treat them like your partners, you're going to get in trouble. And other people say, oh, it's kind of like a marriage. Not really. So it's a unique symbiotic relationship where your success as a franchisor and the success of the franchisee are definitely connected. And there's no getting around it, and you can't ignore franchisees, and you can't put a franchisee in a position where they feel like they're on their own. And I think what we're going to hear today, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. My experience has been when franchisees go rogue, that's my word, they go rogue, okay? They are generally in survival mode, okay? Some of them are belligerent and they just don't want to follow the rules. I get that. But many of them are in survival mode. They're not making money. They got a mortgage. They've collateralized their house with Adam, okay, to get money. And now maybe they feel like they're not getting support from their franchisor, or what they're hearing from their franchisor isn't very well thought out. It's not thoughtful advice. By the way, that's why you should hire Franchise Growth Solutions. The problem there is the franchisee loses confidence in the franchisor. And when that happens, they're on their own. So I'm going to introduce Harold Kestenbaum, who I introduced, briefly this morning. But Harold's, kind of the capo de tutti capo of franchise attorneys. Okay, you know that is, right? He's, I've known Harold now 35, 40 years. 1986 we met. 1986. So I've asked him to moderate this panel because if anyone has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's Harold. So Harold, take it away. This is the clicker here. Yeah, so you click this here, and that will advance the slide. This? Yep. And you need this. You should have a microphone just to ask a question at least. No, this is my sheet. Oh, it's back. There you go. That's your first slide.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Is it on?
This thing on?
It's on? Oh, there we go. I guess it's on.
Harold, I didn't introduce the panel.
Oh, well, okay. To my left is an old friend of mine who once came to me for advice many years ago. We ate at a diner, and he wanted to know what he should do. Right across the street. Yeah. That's right. His name is Evan Goldman, and he's a great, great franchise lawyer. And I love doing business with him, and he does a lot of litigation. That's why he's on the panel. Marianne, I don't know you that well, so
We go way back.
we go way back. Lisa Oak, I do go way back, and she went to high school with the same high school as my wife, so we know each other for a very long time. And Joe Edwards is not a client of mine, but he's a startup franchisor, has done very well. Gary's done very well with him, and he's I don't know if he's experienced what we're going to talk about, but at least we'll get him prepared.
He's in the middle of being prepared right now, so yes. He's got some stuff to say.
What are rogue franchisees? I don't use that word. I use the word recalcitrant, and these are franchisees who don't necessarily go by the rules. Gary and I, when I had my forum back in the day, there was one franchisor, and Gary remembers who he is, who had 700 units. And when we got to talking about this, he said, you know what I do? I have no litigation. I tell the franchisee, sell it. Get him out of the system. You know who that is, remember? Yeah.
Or he would play golf.
Right. And he's still around, and they're still operating. But maybe Evan would like to take this and run with it.
Sure, yeah. So
The majority of what I do on a day-to-day basis is work with franchisors who are experiencing, usually for the first time, franchise troubles. So, not to play the analogy that Gary referred to earlier, but somewhat of marriage troubles. And I do that for my firm's 100 and some odd franchisor clients. And then we also get brought in by other law firms on occasion to just sort of drop the hammer as needed. It's a really uncomfortable situation usually because, again, sometimes they are, Gary, what term did you use? Purposefully rogue or something along those lines, where they're meaningfully doing it. Yeah, they're belligerent. Belligerent, thank you. But most of the time, they just can't get out of their own way, or they're playing in quicksand and they're just trying to get out and doing the stupidest things usually to do it from a purely objective perspective. And so just today, one of Gary and I's clients that's not here reached out because they have a franchisee who's not paying royalties. And I inquired as to what steps they've taken to try to get them to comply, and then said, you have two options. Have a conversation with them, a really frank and open conversation, or have me send a letter and that'll signal to them you're serious. Those are, unfortunately, often, when I get brought in, the only options that are available. And so I think the goal of today's panel is to talk about ways to avoid having to get the litigator involved, because that's in no one's best interest.
Marianne, have you experienced this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But typically, if they've gotten to Evan, you don't necessarily have a legal problem, you have an operations problem, and it boils down from there. And you've got to get out in front of that from the day that you sign a franchise to how you keep them engaged. So I think that the operations people are the one that Lisa will attest to this too. They're the chief cooks and bottle washer. They deal with every single thing, every single day, from family dynamics to everything. And the more that you know about your franchisees and what's going on in their world, the better that you can assist them. So I think it's communication, it's engagement. I think the first sign of a franchisee breaking from the pack is when they stop engaging. You've lost communications. You don't have a regular set of cadence of communication with them. They've broken that, and so now it's time to step it up and not ignore that. So the key is to keep them from getting to Evan and help them solve whatever it is that they're solving.
Lisa, you've been through this, I know, for a long time, having been with Subway.
I was, and I enjoy using those experiences with clients today. I start with two basic principles. Gary talked about one of them earlier, and that is, and we hear it all the time, franchising is a relationship business. It's not a partnership. I know Gary said it. I can't emphasize it enough. I actually like when franchisors treat franchisees as their customers. They're our customers. So that's principle number one. Principle number two is franchisors don't know everything. And the bigger the franchisor, the less they know about the franchisee business. Sorry, but that's my reality. So when a franchisee is not, I'm not going to use the word rogue. I'm not going to use the word recalcitrant. But when they do something a little different, I want to know why. What is it? Not all compliance is created equal. There are some obvious non-negotiables. We talked about it earlier. Non-payment of royalties, not negotiable. Needs quick action. No discussion, got to pay the royalties on time. The other one for me that jumps out is food safety. Too dangerous. But after that, what are the field consultants talking with franchisees about? Why are they introducing a product that's not on the standard menu? What are they looking for? Does the system have an avenue for that franchisee's creativity? If not, it should. Franchisees typically are entrepreneurs. So we need to hear their ideas and consider them without calling them non-compliant or calling Harold or Evan or taking that contract out and enforcing that stick with them. So I'd like to start there.
Joe, I know you were kind of a rookie,
Right.
but have you experienced any of this in your young franchisor life?
Yeah, of course, definitely. From my experience, staying in contact with your franchisees on a weekly, bi-weekly call, communicating with them, seeing what their needs are, having open communications is really what we're finding works best for us. When we see that a franchisee is not communicating with us or is not being compliant, that's when we know that we really have to, bring in the reins and see and make a store visit and, get in front of it.
I went to this slide because it's kind of important to see what the general reasons are for franchisees to be bad people or rogues. And, these are all very important. And, I guess, Evan, you could take a look at these and give some input from your side. I can give you some of mine, but I'll do that last.
Yeah, I think, I don't remember who said it earlier, but, when the franchisees go silent on you, it's usually the result of sort of 5 steps earlier having gone awry. So, Victor, I think it was you who said, having a conversation about being compliant starts in the sales process. Or maybe Gary, I don't remember who said it exactly, but it was a great point, which is, and I'm just, I sort of, as Harold was talking and my co-panelists were talking, I was thinking about all the franchisees that have gone awry in my franchisors' careers, and somewhat smirking because everything they've said brings to mind some particular memory. And just the one I dealt with today, like looking back, the sales process itself was a bit tricky because the franchisee was, pardon the phrase, kind of a pain in the ass in the process, and shockingly, now they are a pain in the ass franchisee.
Shocking.
Where you're locked into a 10-year relationship with them.
Unbelievable.
And to Gary's credit, he gave great warning against this particular franchisee. But yeah, it's just, it's often, I don't think it's intentional. There are some franchisees who are just bad people, bad, frankly, business people, and shouldn't own businesses. And I think part of the franchisor's job at the outset, besides setting the groundwork, as others have said, is avoiding those people that would otherwise be terrible franchisees.
Yeah.
The two that come to mind to me are never, in my mind, ever sell a franchise to a lawyer. Oh my God, why would you ever do that?
I'm sorry, but we had a rule at Subway that we were not allowed to
You
sell
shouldn't. No, they're the worst.
to lawyers.
I hate lawyers, so no offense to myself and all the others in the room. And then the second one is, and this may not be true for everybody, but franchisees who are buying something for their children to run is usually written in disaster.
Big disaster.
It sure is, because I did that. And I lost my shirt.
So that's sort of my thought as to, some of the reasons why franchisees go rogue. It's just they're generally bad business people.
I think, just to add to that, and I'm not a lawyer, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express. If you have to be old to get that. All right. But one of the things, so for the emerging brands in here, how many of you even have field staff, like that go out consistently into the field? And so you guys, that's great, but for so many emerging brands, you just don't have that because you can't afford that yet. So what's happening, right? So you don't have that cadence set up. You're getting there. You're going to be there, but you don't have it set up. And I think it came out earlier, too, about franchisors being afraid of their franchisees, and I think that's true, right? You've got people that have invested their money, and are you delivering enough? So the communication cadences that you set up, like the rogueness tends to happen when there's a loss of confidence on either side, right? The franchisee is not hearing from you. They're losing confidence. And in the beginning, you're going to get 7,000 phone calls because you're figuring out as well how you're going to adapt to this support system that you have, which, again, you're going to be wearing 17 hats and spread very, very thin. So setting up that cadence of communication and outward bound is going to stem a lot of the inward-bound fire hose feeling that's happening. But they need to hear from you and have confidence that you are working towards getting them and helping them be successful. So are you checking in with them regularly, however you do it? And as Joe said, it's like you got a monthly call, a weekly call.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do to get everybody together.
Constant communication.
Yeah, and just really, you can't communicate enough. And when you are sick and tired of talking about something, they are just getting it. So keeping it that way.
Yeah, great. Something I'll add, Marianne just made me think of it. Whoever it is out in the field or in the office supporting the franchisee, I encourage you to think about what that role is. General categories. Are you being a coach or are you being a cop?
A little bit of both.
Sometimes, well, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the issue.
Right, yeah.
If they're not paying royalties, you're being a cop, right? That's an extreme. But if we're talking about innovation and ideas, and I encourage you to, I go back to principle number 1. Franchisors don't know everything.
right.
So we want to set up a relationship, an environment, and communication where we are encouraging those new ideas. Otherwise, they'll go find another way to do it, right?
And they'll take people with them.
And they'll take people with them, and oh, by the way, I've seen that happen too. So you want a collaborative environment. You want to know the answer to your question, why? Why do Subway franchisees insist on putting potato salad on the menu? Are there regional differences? Are there cultural differences? The more geographically diversified you are and culturally diversified you are, you need to be open to that information. It's not all one size fits all.
You know, there's one thing that's up on this screen now, and I'm having this issue with a client of mine. Franchise advisory councils. How many in the room have franchise advisory councils? One, two.
Joe has kind of a franchise advisory.
Right.
We don't have enough franchisees yet, but
Right.
Joe does quarterly meetings with his franchise.
That's important, because the client that I'm talking about, they have 120, and they didn't have one until now. And it's been a problem, because each franchisee is basically doing what they want to do. And now, trying to create an advisory council has gotten some pushback, and they're trying real hard. But I think it's really important, because this goes to open communication. If you don't have an FAC, they don't know what's going on. They think that you're going and doing and spending their money to the best of your ability and how you want to spend it, rather than what's for the benefit of the system at large. And it's pretty clear that you want to do this before they create a franchisee association.
Yeah.
Because once that happens, then you're in trouble. Because franchisee associations are not good for franchisors. And I know that Subway's has one, the big brands have them, the smaller brands typically don't, but if they do, there's a reason for it. The reason is the franchisor is not communicating with the franchisees, and they want to know what's going on, and if they don't create an association, they will never know what's going on. So I think that that is something that you younger brands need to think about. And I'm not sure if you have 5 pays, but when you start getting to 10 and 20, you really start to need to create one. And you know, they don't have to have any final say. That's the franchisor does that, but they want input. Where are you advertising? I'm not getting the people into my store. How come? One of these franchisees has said, "You're not spending my money correctly. I want my money back." I mean, it gets to that point where the franchisees start asking these questions, and the franchisor, if they're not prepared, they don't have an answer. So, I mean, I know, Evan.
Yeah, so in terms of franchise advisory council versus franchisee association, I do think at the Subway level, the 7-Eleven level, which I have some experience with, it does make sense, because it is so many franchisees that you need some sort of structure on that end. The problem is that on the much smaller scale, 10 units, 20, 100, 200 even, the people that are representing the franchisee associations of franchises of that size are one of two types of people, and it's like flipping a coin. It's either really good franchisee counsel that genuinely wants to help make the franchise better and help their franchisee clients, or one franchisee counsel this past year told me, yeah, sometimes my job is to blow up franchise brands, and that's what I'm doing here, right? That is not what you want to result in. And they went from 50 franchisees to 20 rather quickly. Just absolute disaster, because all of these issues that we're talking about are avalanche issues, right? So you'll start with one, then I think Lisa said that it'll be a join-in process. You know, oh, Tom said this, oh, Stacy said that, oh, and now you have 10, 15, 20 franchisees that are just creating this avalanche that becomes unstoppable. So the advisory council will do two things. It may stem that because you're giving people legitimate input, and if nothing else, and I say this as a litigator, it will be wonderful evidence in defense of any silly claims that are brought against you, because you've documented all the efforts you did to create an advisory council, all the efforts you did to make weekly, bi-weekly, monthly meetings, all the support you provided. The franchisee claims can be bucketed into a handful of situations, and the biggest one is usually you defrauded me on the way in, or you didn't support me while I was there. Don't commit fraud, that's how you prevent the first one.
Sometimes.
Creating really good systems in place is how you prevent the other one.
I think if I can add to that, one of the things too, and as Harold said, your advisory council, they are advisors, not deciders.
Yes.
Franchisor decides, right? But one of the things, and if there's one lesson, so many of you as franchisors, you're visionaries, right? You've a lot of very hard time containing things. So if not you, then somebody on your team, trusted maybe operations team, is school yourself on facilitation, conflict, and resolution. Just have that knowledge on how to walk somebody through a conflict so that you're not doing this by yourself. Because that'll allow you, when we set up franchise advisory councils, we took the squeakiest wheel all the time, put them right on it, and then balanced it out with others. And eventually it grew into a system whereby that particular council, first of all, the franchisees will police themselves for the good of the brand, and they'll hold other franchisees accountable. And then, or at least put them in their place, if you will. But then those franchisees determined, as they rolled off, it was like usually 2 or 3 year terms, they decided who was the next best person to help give advice to the brand. So, but as a franchisor, somebody in your team needs to have or understand conflict and resolution, and how you walk through that, and how you peel back what actually is happening, what actually is disturbing this person, and then how you get from A to B. In my career, it's been invaluable in quelling the waters, getting to the root of a problem, and then walking through to a solution.
I think this conversation about franchisee advisory councils is another example of where language matters. The word advisory in that title is critical. They make recommendations, not votes, not decisions, and that becomes part of the culture. What you say, just as we talked about, they're not partners. It needs to be part of the language, part of the culture, so there's no confusion when, as Marianne said, the leadership of the council changes. They don't have to be taught how to talk about it. It's just part of the culture, part of what we do. I'd like to make another point to kind of quell my innovation speech before, Harold, if you don't mind. I feel very strongly that franchisors need opportunities, vehicles for franchisees to express themselves, to make changes to the system.
Yes.
And this is all
So
part of the
important.
advisory,
It is,
right?
yes.
However, franchisors have, we talk about brand consistency all the time, because that's what new franchisees are buying into. If you're all over the place, what are they buying? Why are they paying you royalties? So it's a balancing act. we have to have that vehicle, have that opportunity, but we also have responsibility to other franchisees for consistency. I'll use a simple one. Cleanliness. If one location is disgustingly dirty, how do you think the guy a mile away feels? His customers are affected by it just as. So we have an obligation to enforce compliance for the good of the whole brand. So as much as I talk about being open to suggestions, and franchisors don't know everything, blah, 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 I've been like a soapbox, I also believe we have an obligation to other franchisees, and there's case law about that, that says if we are not protecting what they bought, franchisors have liability.
As a new emerging franchisor like myself, and there's so many also ones in the room, we don't have a formal franchise advisory council, but we do hold quarterly meetings with all our franchisees. It gives them a great open forum to communicate with us, to tell, for us to let them know what's happening with the company, and then for them to tell us what they need also that we're not giving them. So that's really important to start from the onset.
And I think to Joe's point is soliciting, when you're having those calls, is soliciting information from franchisees to
Absolutely,
contribute.
yep.
Because you want everybody to feel a part of it and that they didn't waste their time. So if you know something that went on well in a
Absolutely, yeah.
marketplace,
Of course, you want to share it
bring
with
it
the
in,
group.
right?
Yeah.
And you highlight, spotlighting
Yeah.
people. But, and also to Lisa's point too, and Harold's about, you're not spending my money properly.
Right.
You will be expected within the first 5 years of running your franchise that you will have a Super Bowl commercial
Right, exactly.
using their
Yes.
brand fund.
Yes.
Right? Where's our Super Bowl commercial? That will solve everything that we have, every single thing,
Yes.
right? And I'm going back to 1988 when that came up in a franchise marketing meeting with franchisees. Can't we just do a Super Bowl commercial?
Before we
In any
leave
case.
this
All right,
topic,
yeah, oh, sorry, did I just date myself? Anyway, okay. Did they have a Super Bowl then? Yeah, maybe. Okay.
They've had them for a long
But
time.
another thing too that's incredibly valuable is when somebody is bringing up, and we do want to channel ideas, but sometimes some ideas are not necessarily something that the franchise is prepared for. It maybe not today, but it might be somewhere down the road, or somebody's insisting, or if you don't do this, I'm going to do this. It's like, okay, would you like to lead that task force to find out whether or not that's a suitable program for us? And then they'd be quiet because they don't want to do the work.
Well, actually,
Right?
I have an example that was very successful with
Yes,
that.
love it. have
The
many.
National Brand Fund didn't want to have anything to, and this is early on, don't use revisionist history. Early on, they didn't want anything to do with Jared. Quote, nobody's interested in weight loss stories. It's not going to be good for our business. The guy in Houston said, I don't agree. They put local Houston money against radio ads and sales skyrocketed. So, using what we talked about earlier with the standard chart of accounts, we're looking at the data to share best practices. Why did it spike? $5 footlong is another example. We gave, and to Mary Ann's point, it was voluntary. Nobody told Houston they had to do that. Nobody told Fort Lauderdale that they had to do the $5 footlong test. They were trying to save their business because the economy tanked in 2008. They needed something to get out of it, so they did. And then the company used the data to blow it out nationwide. So again, an opportunity for trial, innovation, and also to Mary Ann's point, a safe space to bring up crazy ideas. We had a saying that went, don't kill the babies. If somebody has a ridiculous nascent idea, to put it out there, because oftentimes it is converted to something useful. But if you don't have the guts to say that silly thing up front, you never get there. So it needs to be a safe space.
Let me mention one more thing about the advisory council, and then we'll move on to the next slide. You don't only need them and use them for advertising and marketing. They could be your, quote, strong arm to get the we talked about this earlier, and I mentioned it, the franchisees who are not reporting. The Franchise Advisory Council is a very good vehicle for them to get on the phone, to speak to those franchisees and tell them, hey, look, reporting benefits the system. Don't not report. We're reporting. We think you should do that too. Because coming from a fellow franchisee sets a different tone than coming from the franchisor. So keep that in mind, because FACs don't only work with and deal with advertising and marketing. Okay. This next topic is really very interesting, and Evan will be able to go into this, but let me just say this. When you have a franchisee that will not listen, will not do what you ask, no matter what happens, and you want to send out a default notice, you better be prepared for battle, because franchisees typically will not roll over and comply once they get a default notice. What they're going to do is they're going to find a franchisee litigator and have them send you a letter that's 10 pages long as to all the things you did wrong when you tried to do after you send out the notice. So be prepared for that if you go to the draconian step of you're out. Evan?
Yeah, no, I agree. So, again, often I'll get called in to send notices of default or notices of termination. Notices of default, we can make them softer, so it's not like, oh, we're going to terminate you, but we're giving you formal notice. Franchisees, at that point, will do one of two things. They'll do what Harold just said, which is probably 40% of the time, they'll run to one of a few law firms here in the U.S. that represent franchisees hyper-aggressively and get the same, what I call Mad Libs letter back that just changes the name of the franchisor and the franchisee and the date. Or they'll say, oh, you know what, these guys are serious now, let me comply. Thankfully, if it's a soft enough letter, that's what ends up happening. But I have a litigation right now that started about a year ago where we sent 7 notices of default to the franchisee before we terminated them, and they're alleging that we manufactured all of the defaults. So, you know, that's the problem you face. I don't remember. It's just a matter of documenting everything really well, because now we're in discovery. My clients are being deposed on Thursday, and we're able to say, no, here's the 46 things we tried to do with this person before we terminated them or defaulted them. Being able to do that from my perspective, from the litigation perspective, from the risk management perspective is hyper important. Also, for the franchisors here who don't have franchisor insurance, you'll be hearing from someone that offers that, I think, next. Highly, highly, highly recommend you do that for 2 reasons. One is litigation is super expensive, and those franchisors that don't have it often will get themselves into a really bad situation where they want to take that next step of terminating, but then realize, okay, then I'm going to have $200,000 to defend myself. I don't have $200,000, nor should I expect you to. And then they get stuck in this like weird non-marriage marriage with their hated franchisee where no one's really happy. So get insurance to defend yourself in those claims, and make sure that the policy allows you to appoint your counsel of preference. Because you don't want insurance defense counsel who's, you know, a school board lawyer, but then gets assigned to your franchisee dispute. It's just a disaster waiting to happen.
I think I like defaults. I don't know why, but anyway, because first of all, they from an empathetic position. If you're speaking to somebody who's in default, defaults protect the system. It's what they do, right? It's a system of moving things forward. But it also gives you a point of reference and a point of conversation with that franchisee. That said, no default should ever be a surprise to the franchisee. It should be presented to them. They should know it's coming, but they also should know what the plan is for the cure before they get it, right? So no default should go out without a very, very clear bullet-pointed cure. This is what needs to be done in order to get you back in the good graces. And it's kind of like, well, how would you feel if Bob next door to you was, you know, selling pretzels at his hot dog stand, and he's not supposed to do that, right? So it's getting people to understand the system. And does it work all the time? No, not all the time. But the goal is to try to keep it from Evan and all the litigation and save people money, because we don't want them spending money on litigation too, because if you're going to spend money on litigation, you could spend the money fixing what you have. The other thing is to pick your battles. Like I had one of my clients called because one of his franchisees was out of compliance and because they chose the wrong shade of blue for a shirt.
Okay.
And I'm like, wait, we got bigger problems than that right now, because they decided to have their stuff done. So it's like, let's fix the other things first, and then we'll go down on the shirts and figure out what we need to do there. But for the time being, let's get them a fully functioning unit, doing what they need to do, selling what they need to sell, moving forward, getting their P&Ls in and all of those kinds of things. If we fix that first, I guarantee you I could fix the shirt thing. But that's not gonna make the change. But the default, it should never, ever be a surprise, and that's where the communication comes in. And that's like when you're looking for your business coaches, understanding, people who understand that level of communication with franchisees and know the warning signs so that you don't get hit with a tsunami. They know when to move things in the right direction and not afraid to have those conversations with the franchisee. You can avoid a lot of headaches.
To piggyback on what Evan said, make sure you have a file on every single franchisee that you have. Document everything, because as Evan said, it's going to come up, and if you don't, you're going to be sitting in a deposition without any defense and anything to say. Every franchisor needs a file on every franchisee. And, with AI now, it's really easy to do that. You don't have to be a rocket scientist anymore. AI, ChatGPT is a great, great tool.
I think, Scott, do you have a question?
I just wanted to piggyback off those comments that, once you send out a default notice, you're down the rabbit hole. You're there. This is for most of the emerging brands that are in the world, that you're sending a default notice, most likely because as a franchisor, you didn't do something you were supposed to do. That's why you have a disgruntled franchisee. And, yeah, you want to try to avoid it at all costs, whether you have an E&O policy or not. That's just the financial side. But, you want to try, you need to try to fix that default before you send it. The default notice is the end. It's the end of the line usually. Usually, especially if you have 5, 6 owners, it's like 20% of your system that you're sending something out to. So it's easier to have a conversation with them and try to get them out of the system. And most franchise attorneys will advise you. It doesn't do you any good to have a bad franchisee.
Yeah. When I say that I like defaults, I like to say, I don't want to send you a default notice. Please help me, right?
It's really hard
Yeah.
to get them to turn. Yeah, you scare them, but they're doing something behind the scenes also.
Right.
Once they get that notice, and I've learned over time, and we call it portfolio optimization. So we want to get people out, and if you have franchisees that you don't like, do whatever you can to get them out, and figure out a way that you can make money on getting them out of the system.
Find the buyer.
Yeah, and you make money on it, and it's just,
Look,
it's hard once you send that notice.
one of the problems that franchisors have is when they go down that road, they're worried about item 3. And that's always in the back of their mind. If I terminate and they come back and they sue us for unlawful termination, it's going into item 3. A lot of franchisors don't want to do that. So they have to find some off-ramp to get them out. And one way is to get them to sell their franchise. Doesn't always work, but sometimes it does.
And Harold, I'd like to make a comment on that, and it's really a plug for FranDev. You always, I don't care how you're growing or where you're growing, you always need a robust lead program so that those existing franchise owners have a vehicle, potential buyers. Because if you don't, they're stuck, and that's no good for anybody. You want to help people. I always talk about franchise agreements as whatever the term of your franchise agreement is. Life happens during that term. Lots of times we hear the franchise sales guy never should have sold to that prospect. That was a bad sale, right? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, I don't know. But in the meantime, life happens. And when that happens, and a franchisee needs to exit, whatever the reason is, it does not matter, you want and need to facilitate that exit for that franchisee. And the way you do it is with a robust lead gen program.
Good point. It really works. And the franchisor that Gary and I were talking about, that's exactly what he did. He had no litigation in his FDD because he got the franchisee he wanted out to sell his business. Worked very well. So we're running out of time. Let's open up for questions. Does anybody have any questions for us? Go ahead.
I have one for Joe specifically. How have you handled whenever you go into the quarterly meetings and you have to say somebody no without, hurt his feelings? In a sense?
That's a hard one, When they're asking for something that you're not really agreeing upon, basically what I like to do is say, we'll get back to you, and then I'll meet with my team, see if we can make it work, and if not, just reach out to the individual person instead of all the franchisees on the call, because that one franchisee can start a big thing, so we just go right back to that person directly.
Anybody else? You were that good?
Well, I think also
Yeah, tell me.
to Joe's point too, especially when it comes to marketing, we should do this.
Right.
It's like, all right, so as a franchisor, there's a couple of opportunities. Yeah, have like the Super Bowl commercial.
Yes.
But it's like, one of the things that you can do is you can co-op with them.
Yes.
And you can say, hey, and maybe, do you have other franchisees in your neighborhood that are willing to put up some money, I'll match it.
Correct.
And then you
Correct.
measure it, right?
Yeah.
You have a purpose and outcome, you have a timeline, and you get it to work.
Yeah, on the calls, the biggest thing lately is, influencers. They really wanted the brand fund to pay for these big influencers. But being in the tri-state area, a big influencer is $15,000-$20,000. And we have a brand fund of, 7 stores at the time. So we're not even collecting that much a month to do it. But we've compromised and got, someone that's on a lower scale. Because you want to hear your franchises and you want to make them happy, but you can't give them everything, So we keep it in budget.
I like Mary Ann's suggestion because it gives us a way to say yes.
Yep.
You always want to try to find a way to say yes.
Correct.
Or massage it to something you can say yes
Right.
to.
Nick?
Yeah. Joe, I had a question. You might have covered this, I'm sorry we stepped out, but are you guys sharing your brand fund with your franchisees? Are you open about where that money is being spent?
Well, you have to put that in the FDD.
Yeah,
That's not a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this past year's FDD, it was disclosed in that, yes.
Well, that's the reason for the council, so they know where the money's going.
He's asking on an ongoing basis, though.
Well, on a yearly basis, but not on a monthly basis.
So we developed recently a system where we share our brand fund with our franchisees on a daily basis, for that matter.
Okay.
They have access to it at any point, and it's really helped in building trust with our franchisees.
Right.
And showing them that, we love that you want an $8,000 influencer. We don't
Right.
have that in the fund today, but, share with us where you think we
Yeah,
should cut. or-
exactly. That's a good idea.
Nick, that's outstanding.
Yes.
And it gives transparency.
Exactly.
The franchisee knows exactly where it's going.
Yep.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I wish I had thought about that.
And actually, if it doesn't work, that franchisee would be the first person to admit it, and it doesn't run through the system. It's like, yeah, we tried it, we put good money towards it, we gave it the run it needed, we evaluated it, looked at the data, it didn't work. Okay, no harm, no foul, fail fast.
The franchisee's gonna say that?
They have, if you have good communications, the systems that I worked in, our franchisees, and again, facilitation, right? Our franchisees were our best source of PR in the system to other franchisees.
Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention, and we appreciate it.